Hey, good Wednesday afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we want to thank Hush Blackwell for hosting the webinar today. My name is Brandon Costantino, and I'm the Executive Director of CleanTX. I'm excited to welcome you to today's presentation, talking a little bit about CleanTX and TREIA and where we're at now as a merged organization. But before we begin, I would like to cover just a few housekeeping items about the webinar. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application icons for your use during the program today. And I want to take just a minute to highlight a few of those for you. If you have any questions during the webcast, please submit your question via the question box. At the end of today's presentation, we'll be answering those questions, and if you have technical difficulties, you can also submit one of those questions, and we'll try to help you through the process. We definitely appreciate the audience participation and encourage you to submit questions. There's also an icon to assist with your viewing preferences. Accordingly, please note that you can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximum icon on the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. And then if you do have any technical difficulty, please click on the help icon. One of the webinar staff members will definitely try to help you out. It has a question mark and provides information regarding common technical issues. Copies of today's presentation will be available on the resource list icon that looks like a folder at the bottom of your screen, along with a link to our previous webinars on this topic. And a recording of the webinar and webcast will be available today, or starting tomorrow, for watching and sharing. Once available, a link to the recording will be emailed to you along with a copy of the presentation. So now that we have those housekeeping items out of the way, today's topic is talking about the new combined CleanTX. TREIA and CleanTX have merged into one organization, and we're going to talk about how we got to that point. But this has been an ongoing conversation. CleanTX and TREIA have been working together on several collaborative projects and meetings to see how we could collaborate long before these discussions ever came about. And the two organizations were very complementary to each other, and we're working with each other. And when the idea of merging the two organizations came about last fall, it just made sense. So here we are, and we're very excited about the future of CleanTX and our organization. And to talk a little bit more about the merger and kind of how we got to where we are and where we've been, we have Ryan Edwards, who is one of the new co-chairs of the merged organization and was the chair of the board of directors for CleanTX, and Melissa Miller, who is also one of the new co-chairs of the merged organization and was the chair of the board of directors for TREIA. So to start off today, we're going to talk a little bit about the history and mission of TREIA, and for that, we'll turn it over to Melissa.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Brandon. It's good to be here with you today. And I appreciate you giving us the introduction. And it's true, we have been having a conversation for quite a while from the TREIA side with CleanTX, and we have collaborated on events in the past and have really enjoyed a really great working relationship over the years. And so just in terms of some information on TREIA, TREIA was founded in 1984. And in many ways was one of the original influencers in Texas for renewable energy. We were instrumental in influence legislation around the creation of the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and in many ways the RPS here in Texas has allowed us to be a front runner in renewable energy, and we are a leader in the United States of renewable energy today because of it. We also had an annual conference for many years called Texas Renewables, and we were able to showcase the Big Tent Alliance of the renewable energy sector that we had in terms of our membership. Several years ago, we made a determination to shift that conference into having a different name, that name being Grid Next. Grid Next was held in Georgetown, Texas originally, and since then we have adopted it to be moving around the state. Instead of having it be a several-day conference, it's now one day offering held regionally around the state. And the purpose of GridNext is to discuss and to explore really methodologies and cutting edge technology and thought leadership around advancing the integration of renewable energy into our power grid here in Texas. The vision of TREIA to achieve 50% renewable energy by in Texas by 2030 is something that we felt that the conversation needed to stay current, and that is why we created GridNext. And so I think that's a pretty good summary of TREIA, Brandon.
Perfect, Melissa. Thank you. And to go along with that, now we'll have Ryan Edwards, who was the chair of the board of directors for CleanTX, talk a little bit about the history and mission of that organization.
Great, thank you, Brandon. So this is a wonderful moment to really pull together the two leading nonprofit organizations, and so kind of given this context for the members on both sides now getting to see what CleanTX and TREIA have been involved with is really helpful to put into context as well as to kind of push forward. So for the CleanTX history, this is an organization that's been around only since 2006, but I say only because there's been a lot of activity between then and now. There's been a lot of focus on economic development as CleanTX has kind of become a center point for a lot of clean technology startups. So with our mission of accelerating the clean tech industry in Texas through information exchange, thought leadership, and strategic partnerships, we've been able to act on that. And primarily that was always done through some networking events such as the Clean Energy Beers. That's always on the beginning of each month. We have our power hours, either in the afternoons or the evenings, and then our larger signature events that have either been associated with South by Southwest or else kind of our membership-driven events that a lot of our boards and teams have put together in the prior years. And we have had a variety of members, both company and individual. So we not only look at how we can help companies with their partnerships and their growth in the clean tech space, but we're also looking to help individuals, whether or not they're job seekers, students, just kind of trying to learn about the space, or if they're on the other side of the table where they're looking to hire either as an individual company or as just a generic hiring manager in their own startup. So this has been a great way to, we'll say, bring in those different aspects of the clean technology space. And with that, I will hand it on back to Brandon, or back to Melissa, actually.
Yeah, so just to recap, so the merger, as we talked about, kind of has been several months in the making, but before that, conversations between CleanTech and TREIA started last spring, just about working together and collaborating. In fact, Julie, who was the executive director for TREIA, is now on our board, so we're happy to continue working with her. But just a side note, I knew that I was in love with TREIA when Julie took me to Juliet's Italian Kitchen for lunch right after I moved to Austin. And I fell in love with that place, so she sold me on TREIA right from the beginning. So with that, I will toss it over to Melissa.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate that. And absolutely, I mean, I think on this slide, I'll share some things, and then if there's any, additional comments from Ryan or you, Brandon, would welcome that as well. So in terms of, I think we kind of set the stage here to talk about why we thought it would make sense for us to merge, and just to kind of detail that a little bit further. I mean, we were really able to see that we had complementary missions and programming, and, Ryan mentioned the Clean Energy Beers. I mentioned GridNext. We're currently on a webinar, and we have a slate of webinars, so we have those. And maybe I'll leave it to you, Brandon, to kind of talk a little bit more about the programming, but the combined programming really provides a full suite of offerings between the two nonprofits coming together in a very complementary way. We have a combined market share. Ryan talked about the economic development aspect and the emerging industry and the clean tech sector. And, you know, we've got on our side, on the TREIA side, we had several utilities that were on the board, and as well as in the membership. And so when we really kind of did a cross-section evaluation of the two organizations' membership, I think there were like two that overlapped, and it's kind of interesting. I think because we worked together so well for so long that perhaps we just kind of organically had evolved in that way, and we felt like, you know, these are people that are involved in the conversation and having similar discussions, and that we should be having those conversations together as a combined organization. Obviously, the combined revenue is beneficial, and which allows us to have full-time staff, have full-time executive director leadership. Brandon is an excellent leader, and it makes perfect sense to oversee the organization. And we have an incredible combined board of renewable and clean energy professionals that it's really an honor to work with. And you know, we had a merger task force that we worked together for 5-6 months, and it was really interesting to watch within, you know, and I know Ryan's going to get into this, some of the analysis that we did, but, you know, right off the bat, within like a couple phone calls in, everyone was really working as a we instead of, in two camps. There was just a natural synergy, and it was nice to see. And I think that's why we wanted to have the task force, is just to kind of to go through the analysis, but also to understand the working relationship. And it really has synergized beautifully. And so I'll stop there, and if there's any other comments from Ryan or Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. And we'll talk a little bit more about this at the end of the webinar, but I mean, we have some exciting things in the works, and we're going to continue doing what TREIA has done best and what CleanTech has done best. And we also have a new webinar series, which I'll mention at the end, and this is kind of the kickoff for that. But we have some really exciting topics and some really exciting things that we'll be bringing to our members. And as we move forward, I think that our members will be very happy with the direction we're taking. So with that, I will turn it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about the due diligence that took place for both organizations to get to the point where we are today.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so this has been a conversation that's at least taken many months to put together, and has brought in a lot of different perspectives amongst, a few boards, a few advisory board members, and it's been a great opportunity to really leverage all of the different strengths of both organizations as we're trying to see why this makes the most sense. And I mean, we saw it in terms of the catalyst to begin with, but then as we continue to go through the diligence process, we continue to flesh out additional advantages for why this merger makes sense. So any good business student knows that if you're going to review a potential merger, that a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats is inherent in understanding just your own organization. So we kind of looked at each organization individually, identified how we can, what those threats, what those risks were through the SWOT analysis. And when we were able to put this merger together in the program, we were able to essentially minimize risk, come up with a means to take those threats to a lower level, and then that's really how you can take a merger through a more expansive growth pattern. And a SWOT was helpful, and then we also looked at it just from the conceptual point of mission comparison and consolidation. So we've already kind of reviewed both missions, but now our new mission statement is to accelerate growth of clean tech and renewable energy in Texas. So that was, something where you can see both elements from the prior organizations coming together and very cleanly, in perpetuity, able to kind of motivate and energize our current membership base and those that are going to want to be members of this merged organization. With the programming review, obviously it's really bringing what both organizations already had, and now we're increasing the value of the content that's going into those. So we have the boards, the advisory board, the kind of the networks of all of those elements that will be able to better provide the good quality content that will help members, subscribers to our newsletter, as well as those that attend our events. And of course, when you're going to do a merger, you have to make sure that the economics make sense. So economy of scale fully applied in this case, and that's going to flesh out over 2020 and beyond. But we're very confident that because we're providing a better value product to our members, that this is a no-brainer. The margins will continue to improve for both organizations, and all the strengths in the board also will ensure that those things happen. So the budget analysis revealed that there's a lot of opportunity with this merger.
Perfect. Thanks, Ryan. And
yep.
Yeah, perfect. And to kind of go along with what Ryan already talked about with the combined mission statement, that leads us right into the next part of our conversation, which talks about how we decided to keep the CleanTech name. And for that, I will turn it back over to Melissa.
Thanks, Brandon. So this slide shows something that's kind of interesting is you can see the new logo for the organizations as well, and it's basically a blend of the organization's two logos. So I wanted to point that out. We did have an extensive discussion on the name and which name to go with, whether it be a new name or one of the other organizations' names. What we ultimately came to was that the CleanTX name and the GridNext brand together were the most complementary as well as relevant of our brands, and had the most forward-looking relevance. Also, when you look at the combined mission that Ryan just talked about, in terms of accelerating the growth of clean tech and renewable energy in Texas, it made the most sense in order to have the biggest and broadest reach around our mission, and to convey what it is that we are together combined through the name of CleanTX. And so we were able with TREIA to bring over our brand GridNext, and CleanTX kept its name, and so then combined we both are complementary of each other and able to retain some of our our core branding. And so this is something that we did not take lightly in any way, and we felt by integrating some of TREIA's imagery into the logo, we also were able to retain some of that historical element of TREIA as well.
Yeah, that logo, I am just in love with it. I think it turned out great, and definitely excited to continue building on the GridNext brand as we move forward. With that being said, one of the questions that we got a lot was what happens to existing TREIA members since they're being kind of folded into this new combined organization. So Melissa, do you want to talk about that just a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So basically, there's really no change. Again, when we looked at the two organizations' membership structures, they were very similar. And so as a member of the new organization, you effectively now have access to more in terms of networking opportunities, more informational events. TREIA also, I'll mention, was a 501c6, and CleanTX is a C3 and a C6. And what that means is that it's just a broader spectrum of opportunities to work in the nonprofit sector, and which aligns itself with grant opportunities as well as funding white papers, things of that nature. So there's just a much broader reach that we can have combined, and in terms of benefits and offerings for TREIA members. And so you would still have your same membership rate, your renewal date which is, January 1, doesn't change. And so it's really, there's really not a lot of change except for growth and new offerings.
Perfect. So the next topic is talking a little bit about our future. So what does the future of the merged organization look like, and including our combined mission? And Ryan, you already talked a little bit about that, but I'll let you expand a little bit more on that.
Of course. So what I like about this slide is that it really talks about the intent of this merger, because it's really forward-looking and very optimistic. And I think that looking at what our current membership base, the types of members they are, companies and individuals, and the varying parts of the industry that they touch on, they'll be able to benefit from this new value offering that we're able to put together in our new membership tiers, which will be released in the coming weeks. So we'll have, I mentioned the economics already, but we already have the quality content that's coming together between GridNext and everything that CleanTX have kind of been able to put together with their newsletter and kind of ear to the clean tech industry. So that's just more that we can provide at practically the same rate to our customers, our members, and that's how you get an optimized membership value. Both organizations had always wanted to kind of expand to multi-city. TREIA, prior to the merger, had already done a few GridNext events outside of Austin, as you know. So this multi-city model is definitely a part of the plan. Obviously, with COVID-19, that adds a nice challenge to overcome, but we're confident that this multi-city model will be within sight in the very near future. And that just means both events as well as just the membership companies that can tap into the CleanTX network. And all of this, gets back to being a nexus for clean technology companies. So TREIA's clean energy focus obviously folds in nicely because clean technology is much more, broad in stroke, but the job seekers from both from that clean technology space will be able to take advantage of that as well.
Perfect. And maybe just to elaborate a little bit on that with the next slide, Melissa, if you want to talk a little bit about what we can expect from the GridNext brand and our combined programming.
Sure, absolutely. So, kind of keying off of several things we've sprinkled through the presentation today, and so just kind of recapping there for everyone. Our intent is to have the monthly clean energy beers as happy hours, and they've been, Brandon, and those are on, when are they? Every month in Austin?
Yeah, so as soon as we can get those back going again, they are at the ABGB on the first Tuesday of each month. So they're from 6 to 8 p.m., first Tuesday of each month at ABGB. The May Clean Energy Beers has been canceled, but hopefully sometime this summer we can get those back up and running after we get through this social distancing that we're currently in.
Great, thank you. So that's been a long-standing and well-attended networking event, and then our plan is to expand those into our local chapter cities as well. And our plan is to have those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Houston, and San Antonio. And then next, we talked about GridNext, and we last year took it from a several-day event to being a one-day event and holding it regionally, where we would kick off the first one would be in Austin, and then we would have follow-up one-day seminar, one-day events in the regional cities that we talked about. And we may, go to different cities. It's something that we can look at what's driving the content. Part of that has to do with, advancing the conversation, which is key. The event itself is designed to actually advance that conversation so we can understand how we can integrate more renewable energy into the grid. And so, for example, in Lubbock, with Lubbock Power and Light coming into the ERCOT grid, that's an interesting an area that might be worth holding an event there, for example. So as things around the state evolve, it might make sense to be in those cities. So that'll be something that we'll keep an eye on. And then, monthly webinars, and we'll be holding those on the second and fourth Wednesday at noon of every month. And actually, Brandon, I'm going to pause there and see if you had anything more to say on that too.
Yeah, so we're actually kicking that off in the month of May. The first one will be on May 13th, and it's a pretty relevant topic that I think will have a lot of interest. We're going to be talking about the impact of the pandemic on the grid. So we'll be sending out official invites for that webinar here within the next few days, but we have a really good panel lined up, and definitely going to be taking advantage of the webinar platform since everyone's used to it already. But I think that it'll be an exciting series that we'll be launching starting in May, and like Melissa said, the second and fourth Wednesday at 12 p.m.
Thank you. And then also power hours, which showcase member businesses and then white papers as well, are some of the other elements that would be in the offerings for the programming.
Perfect. Well, that pretty much wraps up our presentation today. If you have any questions, make sure to throw them in the question box. We do have a couple that I'll read the question and then let Melissa and Ryan respond. The first one is from Kevin and Bunker Labs. Kevin and I have worked together on a few other things. I actually went down to Houston and did a presentation, a panel with him last year, but Kevin wants to know what they can do to help the brand grow in the Houston area.
I can hop on this one. And Kevin, thank you for attending and appreciate the question. Houston is definitely part of the strategy going forward, and so probably the most immediate thing that we can do is start building those relationships and talking a bit more frequently. So Kevin, you can definitely expect to see an email from us shortly after this call. But like we mentioned before, we want to start getting more and more events and start talking to more of the companies that are down in Houston and all over Texas. So we look forward to those engagements.
Thanks, Ryan. And then Melissa, I'll let you answer this next question from Jose, wanting to know when Grid Next will take place this year.
Great question. So in all fairness, we have been working really hard on that as well. We obviously needed to regroup with all of the COVID-19 situation. And so we've been looking hard at that. And right now we're targeting the first week of August and holding it in Austin. And the reason for that is twofold. First, we think August hopefully will be far enough out to be able to hold an event and to not have to reschedule it. Secondly, being that this is for both of the organizations, has historically been our home base, and we were going to do a launch of this merger publicly. We would have done it, rather than doing this webinar, for example. But since we're not doing that, we think holding it in Austin probably makes the most sense, and then pivoting from there to other cities. And so you'll be looking to see something from us in the near term with those specific dates and the programming.
Perfect. Thanks, Melissa. And then the only other comment was from Raj from Nexus, asking similar to Kevin what he can do or to help us build in the Dallas area, and already had a great call with him, and we'll continue to reach out to you and definitely leverage your help as we expand across the state. So Melissa and Ryan, I don't think we have any other questions. So with that, I'm going to thank everyone for joining us today. Like I said, you'll be getting information about the webinar series launching in May from us here within the next few days. But we hope the information today that we provided you was helpful, gave you a little bit of insight as to how we got to where we are and where we've been. Again, if you have any questions, if you need anything from me, my name is Brandon Cosentino. I'm the Executive Director of the combined organization. My email is brandon@cleantech.org. I'm happy to hop on a call with you or do whatever I can to help you in your organization or business. But again, that concludes today's program. If you have not already, there's a survey icon at the bottom of the screen to complete a short survey about the webinar. And a recording of the webinar and webcast will be available starting tomorrow that you can watch and share. Once available, that link will automatically be sent to you. Please join us for our next webinar, The Impact of the Pandemic on the Grid and Renewables, on May 13th, and that invitation will be coming out shortly. This concludes the webinar. Thank you again for joining us, and Ryan and Melissa, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.